So let's get started with our first setup. Now, this is a straightforward, simple talking head. Talking head is a phrase we use to describe an interview. Now, if we look at the shot here, we've got David, our contributor here, who I've placed at this end of the table, largely because the light has moved right around here and there's so much daylight coming in. Now, interestingly, you may not see it as much on these other cameras, but because I'm using a large Super 35mm sensor here, it's very light sensitive, and that's the camera I'm going with because that's my interview camera. A lot of uncontrollable light at the end of the table there. Now, I could close the drapes, but what I want to do, and the first thing I always do, is try and find a frame. Now, experience tells me that if you shoot slightly higher looking down on someone, it's a bit more flattering because you're looking down on their nose, not up at their nose. So that's the first thing. And what I'm looking for is a frame that I think will work for this shot. Now, if I have David looking over this side, my problems are down the right-hand side of frame. I've actually got a lot of light there. Now, that could work quite well, but I'm concerned about the highlights on that wall. So what I'm actually going to do is see if I can't reduce that right away by just closing these drapes. Notice I haven't even opened up a light yet. What I'm trying to do is control my environment and see if I can't use the existing environment to my advantage. So what I'm trying to do always is reduce problems rather than add to them, and sometimes turning on lights can add to your problems. Now, that has just solved my problem massively for me, because if I were to frame David this way, I have a problem in that I can see the jib we're using to shoot this with in the corner of shot. And that could be anything in frame that you don't want. So actually we'd like to shoot this way. Now what I can do, and what I think I will do, is move the chair out of the way. So I can get my camera position in. I'm always looking for a couple of shots. I'm looking for a mid shot, and because I'm on a zoom, this is at 24mm, I can zoom in and get a close-up as well, and that to me is really nice. Now, my camera's white balance is set to 3200 Kelvin. It's a tungsten setting. The reason I've done that is that my lighting is all tungsten, but I'm taking advantage of the fact that we've got a window here, which is a beautiful big light source. Don't avoid using light that's already there. What I try and do is complement the light that's already on a location. That shot there works very nicely for me because I've got a lovely highlight coming down the left side of David's face, right side on screen here, and the blue light is just bringing the detail up on that wood paneling in the back of shot. And the chairs, because they have texture as well, is adding depth and dimension to the shot. And remember, what we're trying to do when we light interviews is create depth and dimension by creating light and shade. Shadows equals contrast. So what we've got now is a frame which works for me on 50mm and works for me on 24. By pulling that out, what I'm trying to do is frame so that I get David's hands in the bottom of frame, but the two lights on the wall in vision as well. And that is just lovely. So I'm just going to move this chair, and again, I've yet to put a single light up. I'm spending this time dressing my frame and making sure that anything that's in vision is taken out of vision before I light. And this kind of stuff will just save you hours when it comes to lighting, because what you're doing all the time is looking at the frame and thinking, how would I like to light this? And my first thought is to take my small softbox and use this as a soft key light this way onto David. So let's do that now. Put this over here. You'll find yourself when you're lighting always just moving things around. You put something down and it won't be in the right space, just move it out of the way. Now, for my dado light, I'm going to use that as a backlight. And I think what I want to do is put that backlight in the corner of frame over here behind the jib, so I light the back of David. So I'm actually just going to plug these in and have a look at what these do straight away. So this softbox is a small softbox, and this will give me a nice big spread of soft light. Very flattering, will wrap around David's face very nicely. when you're using these Lowell reefer lights, it's very important to keep the white front on them. Two reasons. One is it's diffusing the light, but secondly, it's actually got a fiberglass thread weave in it, which will protect your subject matter should the bulb decide to blow. So, first light on. Right, let me just check focus. Now, right away, that's producing a very nice quality of light, wraparound light on David's face. If I move the light closer, obviously it gets brighter. You can see David's eyes squinting a little there. We move the light further back, we back the light off. Let's look at what happens as we pan the light. We see it has an effect on the back of shot. If I swing it round this way, I end up lighting that chair in the back of shot, and it's actually a little bit distracting. So what I want to do is put that about there. So what I'm actually doing is flagging the light by moving the light off the chair at the back there, simply by panning the light off. And even when the light is facing this way, it's still producing a nice quality of light on David. Now, let me just dial down my iris and get a nice focus point. Now that's fairly pleasing. I think what I want to do now is just look at that backlight, which I'm going to use my dado light for. Now the dado lights come in two options. One is with a built-in dimmer and one is with an inline dimmer, which looks a bit like this. Both do the same job. I have both lamps. In this situation, I'm choosing to use this one just because I want to, once you mind your back there, John, I'm going to put this light up around about here. Poor John's got to run around with his camera rig and me just walking around the place, so I'll always try and give him some warning. Now, what I'm trying to do with my backlight is get it at an angle whereby it will just skim down here, right down here. And the idea is that now this is a built-in dimmer, so look at what it's doing. I can dim that up and down, and it has an 8-leaf barn door, so I can sculpt that light into any shape I want. And if you look at, I'm going to turn that big light off for the time being, just so we can work with one light at a time. What we're actually doing, and you'll see this on the master shot, is that we're just turning this light on and off. And if I turn up the brightness, you'll see what I'm doing is I managed to shape the light. And John, you'll probably see this, maybe a matter at the gym will probably see it. I'm creating a shaft, and see I'm rotating that shaft around. I don't want to light too much of the rest of the table. I just want to light David. And so what I can do is use the barn doors, and this is where a dado light's really cool. If you pull this focus back, see how I can just isolate David and just isolate the area that I want to light. I've kept the light off everything else. So that's the kind of shot I want. I'm going to dim that down to about here, and then have a look at that shot. So that's still a little bit bright because again that camera is so sensitive. So I'll knock this right back. Now to our eye it doesn't look all that bright, but when you turn this right down, I mean that looks like it's barely doing anything, but remember that light is directionally hitting David's face right here. And again, the sensitivity of the camera, that's looking not too bad. Let's put the soft key back on. Right. That's looking pretty nice. So what it's doing is just picking up the highlight on that side of frame. That's the wide shot. Let's push in for the close-up. See, that to me is looking like a very nice frame. Now, we've got this lovely blue light coming into frame, and what I might like to do is see if I can't add to that. I might use the V light, which is this one here. This is 500 watts. And just move this over here. Again, this is all out of vision. And so, if I can get my power source close enough, one of the frustrations, I guess, one of the challenges rather of this room is that we've only got 2 power points. And so we're running extension cables, and I think this is going to be too far from our extension cable because it'll only stretch to here, so we can't do that. Let me, in that case, here's another solution. What we're looking for is light sources, not just necessarily putting up lights. And so if we remove this and bring our trusty reflector into vision, which is stored over here. And grab my stand. Things can often get a little bit crowded on set, and especially if we're doing this demo, we've got a lot of stuff around. What I want to do is bounce a bit of light back into this side of the frame. And as lighting is always an experiment, so we'll have a look. See how that's just actually taking light off the softbox and reflecting it back into frame. So that will work about there. So what I'm doing is using this attachment, this kind of thing called Interfit that makes this, but there's a lot of manufacturers make these. And it's just a stand attachment. We spoke earlier about modifying light, and this is a device that does just that. This simply holds the reflector into position so you can have hands-free operation. Because you know, in situations like this, I don't have a gaffer on this job. Very few jobs that you do, especially if you're doing interviews and this type of thing. So you have to just work with gear that you can carry. And that's just bringing up a little highlight onto the side of David's face. So I'm using this light source, and that's bouncing off that reflector there and giving me a very pleasant mid shot. Now, I still feel this backlight's a little bit on the bright side. Dim that right down. Now, when I dim this right down, it's worth noting that the color temperature will change. The image will go a little bit warmer. And if you wish to, you can correct that using color correction gels. But it works for this shot for me, and I'm pretty happy with that. There we go. So that's taken 10 minutes maybe. 2 lights and a reflector. And that's giving us a very pleasing interview setup with David here. We've got a lovely wide shot there, which includes his hands. And if I tilt up a little bit, let's remove this umbrella. Didn't need that in the end. We can see his hands in shot. That's a nice mid shot, or mid to wide shot. And then we can go close up there on the 50mm. And that again is a nice looking image. You could put a backlight somewhere to give a highlight on his head, but the problem is, where do you put it in this room? And it's about creating separation. We've created enough separation that the blue in the back of shot gives you separation from the warm foreground. And then we can even go to a close-up shot here. Just move this matte box. Let's take this off here just for a second, because I'm using the 24-70, and actually we're not getting any adverse effect of flare. But if we go up to the 70mm, there we've got a lovely close shot. So what we've done is we've lit once, we've got wide shot, mid shot, close up. And the technique that I'd recommend you use when you are reframing in an interview situation is the producer would sit in just here and you would reframe on the producer's questions. So you could start with the wide shot, and on this 24-70 lens you always have to refocus, it won't track the focus very well. So there's your wide shots with, you know, the two lamps in vision, and his hands in shot. At 50mm you've got a nice mid shot, and those lamps in the corner frame still in vision. Nice shot again, and then punching for the final shot, we've got a 70mm. So there we go, very simple setup, very lightweight kit. We've used two lights and a reflector, and that's it.